this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Ken Greene, principal at the Kenneth Greene Law Office. Thanks for joining me, Ken.
My pleasure, Jesse. Nice to see you this morning.
No, it's great to have you on the program, sir. Kicking off episode 181 with a bang. So glad to have you on here and looking forward to learning more about yourself and your career to date in equipment finance.
And 181 is my lucky number, by the way.
Okay. Note to self. Note to self. Ken, for those people who haven't had the privilege of meeting you, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and your career to date?
I am a New Yorker, born there. I've kind of been a pretty peripatetic traveler throughout my life, and I moved many times. Last night was thinking about it and kind of anticipation of this. I think I moved 25 times in my first 25 years of life. I lived everywhere from Paris to San Jose and then some. Trying to
All right,
get
so real quick, what's the least favorable spot you've ever been in? Before I forget.
That's a very good question. I've always been pretty happy. Paris, unfortunately, you cannot live in Paris unless you have a pretty good command of French and money. And at the time that happened, I was a kid, and I was really just on a search for music and poetry, and I knew Jim Morrison was buried there. It's a long story, but in any event, Paris wasn't great to me. So I went to New York, and New York was a little different. But anyway, I went to law school because it was too cold to live in Boston anymore. I went to college at Brandeis, wonderful school. I studied music and sociology with an emphasis on music. I really got into music and started to meet musicians then. And I had a band the entire time. My musical days go back to high school when I played in a band with Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. Our band was called The Quivering Thigh.
Did you have the hair?
He was not allowed to grow his hair. His father was a policeman. And not only wouldn't he allow him to grow his hair, but he wouldn't allow him to play in a rock and roll band. So what Dee, who at the time was Danny, sorry, Dee, I know you'll kill me if you ever hear this. What he would do was he put on his sweatpants, sweat clothes until his daddy was going out running. He'd run down to the studio that my dad gave us in his building. We'd practice for 2 hours, and he'd run back, and his father would go, "That was a hell of a run there, Danny." And but that's how. And anyway, so The Quivering Thigh, taken from Shakespeare, by the way, so it must be clean. Anyway, so my music was always part of my life, and so I studied music, and then I studied sociology, and then in law school at Brandeis, I got a bite from Charles Roggevin, who was the Attorney General of Connecticut, and my professor in the course called The Philosophy of Law. And we bonded in a way that no one else in the class did. It's funny because all the other students in this small class of 10 were very much little lawyers. They'd come in with their suits and their briefcases. And I'd walk in, with my ponytail and my bass. And it seemed like I didn't belong. And I remember the first time Raghavan asked a question, and he went around the room, and everybody gave lawyer-like answers, and I gave an answer, whatever answer I gave. Professor Raghavan said, "Of all of you here, Greene's the only one who answered that question like a lawyer." And we really got tight. And he took me under his wing and taught me about what law is about. And when I realized that what law is about and what law is taught, how it's taught to you, or there's a dichotomy there. And he said, the reason you want to know law is to protect yourself and your family and your friends. And I've always carried that anthem through to my practice. My practice has always been based on protecting people. And I try to skirt around the inequities and the problems in the legal profession, which are money based, billing based, time based. I have had thousands of cases in my career because I've been doing this since 1980, all in the equipment finance industry. I started with Bank of Merrill Lynch. I've gone to trial 2 dozen times, maybe. I always try to avoid trial because I call it a lose-lose situation. So, that's how I got into it, and that's where I stayed. And I've developed an amazing network of friends and colleagues I've been involved in every association, and it's taken good care of me, and I feel like I've taken good care of my clients. So that's how I evolved into an equipment finance lawyer. I do other things because of my music um, co-career. I have a lot of artist friends, like the guy in Foreigner and Dee Snider and hundreds of others. I produce concerts and I play music still. We do a lot of recording, writing. I've never given up music, although I was told I would have to become a lawyer. But I always accepted that challenge and rejected it, and
Sure.
become a music lawyer too, to a large degree. And I've got some business interests in recording studios and recording projects. And it keeps me sane. It's a left brain, right brain thing. Law can be challenging. Clients can be challenging. Judges can be challenging. Music gives me peace. So when I'm done with my practice each day, I go to the piano and play, or go
That was
somewhere.
my next question: is what's your preferred instrument to play?
I play a lot of instruments. I mean, piano lately, I've really gone acoustic. I used to have the big Rick Wakeman setup with the Hammond B3 and all the keys surrounded by all the keyboards. And I also, I have played guitar, bass, sax, um, harmonica, um,
Hmm. Well,
Bach.
I know. With Ralph Petta retiring from the ELFA, I mean, he played keyboard for the financial statements. So I don't know if they found a replacement yet. Just, just
Yeah,
saying.
maybe that's it. Funny, speaking of New Orleans, when Ray Williams was at the helm of, I think it was Well at the time, we had a conference in New Orleans at the Sheraton, and there was a club there. So he said, "Why don't we get musicians from the association to play?" And I said, "Great." And so I sent around solicitations, and I got exactly 0 responses. Now we had this commitment to open the conference with music, and we had me. And I didn't mind playing solo, but I didn't really want to.
You have one
Uh,
of those contraptions on your back and
yeah,
everything.
right.
Just sitting
With
there like this, like
like the monkey.
yeah.
I was kind of feeling like I might go that way. And when I checked into my hotel, the the bellboy dropped off my bags, and as he was leaving, I said, "Hold on a second. Could you recommend a good jazz club?" He goes, "This is New Orleans. You got to be more specific than that." I go, "How about Marsalis? Give me, something along the Wynton Marsalis, Branford Marsalis." He goes, "Branford. I love Branford. I'm a sax player." I go, "Great. Where can I see that?" He gave me a recommendation. And as he was leaving, I said, "Whoa, whoa, hold on a second. What are you doing tomorrow night?" "I have no plans." I go, "Look, do you want to play some music downstairs at the club? I'll get all the equipment together. All you need to do is show up with your sax." He goes, "Yeah, I'll do it." And he starts to leave. I go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. Do you know any other musicians around here?" He goes, "Well, I know a bass player who just started with the hotel. He's also a bellboy. Let's go find him." So we went and found him. And I said, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" He goes, "Nothing." I go, "You want to play bass? I'll have the amp. Just bring your bass downstairs." He goes, "Sure." I go, "Great." do you know a drummer? He goes, well, I have a friend out in Lafayette. I don't know, I'll call him. So he calls him up. He goes, yeah, he says he'd play, but it's far and he needs the gas money. Hey, well, tell him I covered the gas money. So now I got a bass player, a drummer, a sax player, and a keyboard player. The next morning we were at Cafe du Monde, and there's a trumpet player outside playing, and he's playing, Amazing Grace. He's very, very good. His name is Hack. He's kind of an institution there if he's still alive. And as I was leaving, I threw a couple of bucks in his tip jar, and I said, "You want to do a gig tomorrow night with me and a bunch of guys I just met?" And he goes, "Sure. Can I sell my tapes?" Kind of dates the story, right? And I go, "Sure." So all right, I got a band. So I go down to the music store in the French Quarter with Ray Williams, and we rent a bunch of gear. And I go to the club and I set everything up. I even brought a guitar just in case. I had drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, PA, and there's like 600 people standing in the corridor, the foyer, as they say in French, in Orleans being French. And they were at the door, and I'm on the stage, and none of these guys are there. And I'm thinking, what are you, crazy? They're not coming. I don't know their names. I don't know how to reach them. I'm going to end up playing the piano on a stage full of gear. And at 6 o'clock, the door opens, and Chris, the sax player, walks in, followed by the drummer and the bass player. And then about 5 minutes later, Hack. And we all get on the stage and we all look at each other and we go, all right, what do you want to play? And it's like four black guys from New Orleans and this white kid from New York, California, wherever. Different age, every age represented. We had nothing in common.
But
And
music.
Chris starts to play Ain't No Sunshine. And I join in, and the band joins in, and we play for 2 hours. And it was great. After we were done, people were coming over to me going, is that your band from California? Or did you just hire them? And then I told them that story. And
That's
I'm sorry for
fantastic.
being long-winded, but it was
Hey, no, you're definitely resourceful, and
we made it happen and it was fun. So I like the idea of starting off conferences with music.
sure,
It's
sure,
a
sure.
wonderful, it's it's a sign of warmth and camaraderie. It's a beautiful thing to do.
Well, and I don't know if you remember what year that was, but I guess we can get into that now. You did something similar for the upcoming AACFB conference. So do you want
Yes.
to talk about what you're putting on for that, Ken?
Yeah, also kind of a fortuity. Here we were scheduling the conference, and it occurred to me to see what bands might be around in Phoenix during that time. And I was looking at scrolling through Google, and it said Foreigner was going to be in town a couple of days before. And I happen to know some people in Foreigner, so I picked up the phone and I called Bruce Watson. I said, "Hey, Bruce, I see you're going to be in town when I'm going to be in town. I'm going to be there for an association conference." He goes, "You could come to the concert?" I said, no, I'm going to be kind of busy, but how would you like to bring your band to our association?" And he goes, "I don't think I could get the whole band there, but I can get a trio of our front guys, Louis Maldonado, me, and Bruce, Michael Bluestein. And we are the keyboard player, two guitarists, the singer, and we do all Foreigner music. And you can afford us. It won't be $200,000. It'll be $3,500. I go, it's done. So he goes, all right, let me get you in touch with our manager coordinator and we'll get it all coordinated. So we are going to kick off the AACFB conference this year. And to me, the association has three responsibilities: education, ethics, in entertainment, apart from the camaraderie and the friendships and the relationships that are built. So the entertainment portion looks like it's covered. We're going to open up the concert on the 15th at 3 o'clock at a club that we rented, or that we've got a private club called the Stir Crazy Comedy Club. And Foreigner is going to take the stage and play for us. And after that, we've got a second band. Katie Baker from the board has a friend named Billy Brown who just signed a contract with Sony. I listened to them. They're country music and they're really great. So we'll have hours of music. And perhaps equally important is that this is a charity event for cancer. We've had our share. I just got over 2 years of kidney cancer. I'm hopefully in remission. I'll find out next month. We've got another gentleman on the board, a wonderful guy named Roderick Knowles. He just started his bout with cancer. Foreigner themselves have lost two of their main players to cancer and have a third who is a survivor, Michael Bluestein, who will be playing keyboards. So we picked the Cancer Support Community Group out of Phoenix, which actually the CSC has outlets everywhere. And I was introduced to them when I first had my diagnosis of cancer. I introduced Roderick to them, and they've been a great help to him because he's not supported by the kind of family that I am. He doesn't have the network of people, and they have provided that. They will hold your hand, explain to you what's going on, explain to you what's going to happen, give you hope. And hope is what cancer is about. You got to have hope. You got to have faith. It will reduce your stress, and stress is really bad for cancer. And of course, when Foreigner found out about the cancer benefit, they were equally excited. So this is going to be an event to bring everybody together around a wonderful cause and some wonderful music. So I can't think of a better way to kickstart this conference. We're really looking forward to it.
No, it's going to be a good time. And, congrats to you and Monica for putting this thing together in such a short period of time, and especially with the star power to kick off a conference. That's fantastic.
It usually takes a little bit longer than 3 or 4 weeks, but we did what we had to do, working around the clock like you do.
Yeah. You know what? We can sleep tomorrow.
Exactly.
And I'm going to circle back to your law practice.
Yeah.
So you've been in equipment finance since 1980.
Yeah.
Any specialty areas that you focus on for clients, Ken?
Well, initially it was everybody. My first company I worked at was Bank of Merrill East. Bank of Merrill East was a tax-oriented lessor whose primary goal was to have tax offsets for the Bank of America. And so that was when we still had the investment tax credit. So they would do ginormous leases of planes and trains and stuff that really gave them some tax benefits. And then the ITC was repealed and leasing changed substantially. Up until then, there were only a few leasing companies in the country. U.S. Leasing, which I believe was the first leasing company in the country. GATX was there. I think Wells was doing some leasing. There were about 4 or 5. I went over to a law firm called Ross and Ivanjack, which was the first one of 2 leasing companies in the entire country. Franz Allen Share being one. They're still around. Ross and Ivanjack's gone. Leasing grew. It didn't shrink because of the ITC. It just became more profit-driven than tax-oriented. I represented lenders, brokers, vendors, and just about everybody in the industry. I worked a lot with the associations. I was on the board of WHALE, UAL, whatever it was called at the time, a couple times. Very active with the associations. I was active with the ELFA when it was ELA, And then I didn't know much about NAELB, and I kind of ignored it for a while until about 10 years ago. Rodney Blecha, I think is how you pronounce his last name, called me up and asked me whether I wanted to become their counsel. And I said, sure. And as a result, I've become much more broker oriented. We are a broker association. We still have lenders, and I still have quite a few lender clients, but I've become very conversant with the actual business of brokering. I find it's really important, and this is really, I think, what's helped me in my practice is to understand your client's business. If you just look at your client like a legal problem, it's really hard to understand what that legal problem means to your client. If you understand their business, you'll understand their problem, and it makes it that much easier to rectify it. So that's kind of where I've evolved, and that's what I've been doing for, I think, 8 years now.
Yeah.
And I probably will until I retire.
Yeah, you got a long time before that happens.
I
But
hope not.
I guess I wanted to touch on the being in California, the California disclosure laws.
Yeah.
You know, I know you're probably like, ugh, those things. you know, and I guess just legislation in general. I mean, you're from New York, I'm from New York, but I'm probably from a different part of New York than where you're from. But with all the and then these other states that are jumping on board, and it's like just stop.
Yeah.
Um, you know, do you mind just kind of talking about that environment? I mean, from a broker perspective, especially, right? Because I think the brokers are responsible for how they collect some of that data, and then
Only
I don't know, maybe if you want to have that conversation in regards to
yeah,
just some of the stuff
I
you
can
deal with.
condense it to something that's palatable to the extent that first off, what happens, it's just like it's the reason you take your shoes off at the airport. One bad guy can do it. And so when I started leasing, it was the Wild West. You could do anything. There was no regulatory oversight whatsoever. That couldn't last. And suddenly there was legislation, and then there were administrative bodies like the DFPI, and New York State's got one to keep an eye on the finance industry. And then licensing happened, and nobody was very happy with it. And we're still not very happy with it because it is a very cumbersome process to get a license in California. California is the only state that makes it really difficult to get a license. People in New York don't even bother. In the other states, it's basically a registration process. So foregoing that, disclosures are really a lender's responsibility in almost every state that I've seen. The brokers, fortunately, really only have one major responsibility, and that's to make sure that the disclosure statements get signed before the deal gets done. A lot of brokers are worried about the content, but in fact, brokers, particularly in California, are immune from the content of the disclosures. It's up to what the FPI calls providers, which means the company providing the money. They use different terminology because they don't understand the industry, but it's really the funder, the funding source that's got to
And,
put together.
for 1071, I know that can's been kicked down the road. Is that going to be pretty much the same thing, you think?
I
Or
don't know anymore with 1071.
sorry to mention that four-letter
No,
word, but it's like
there's everything is
I
subject
guess
to
it's not a word. I
litigation.
guess it's not a word. I guess it's not a word, but
It's
whatever.
a word. It's a term. Um, as you know, everything now gets litigated. Climate disclosures, things that you think wouldn't be an issue. Now, there's a Corporate Transparency Act now, which is supposed to be a way of combating terrorism and RICO type violations. And it requires that certain companies um, disclose to FinCEN, who the primary owners are, how much they own, what percentage, a lot of personal information. Nobody's very happy with that either. First of all, it's just another administrative step. The more time you spend on licensing, disclosures, 1071 Dodd-Frank altogether, Corporate Transparency Act, climate things that are supposed to be good, it takes away from your business. You need to hire people with the
Your cost goes up.
disclosures. Yeah,
Cost
cost goes up. So the concept of the DFPI stands for the Department of Financial Innovation and Protection. I'd like to know who they're protecting, because as they make this more burdensome, it's actually hurting the consumers. And when I say consumer, I don't mean consumer. I mean the borrowers, the commercial entities that are borrowing. So it's overregulated. The pendulum has swung. That went from the Wild West to the Big Brother is always watching you. I believe in, Adam Smith's invisible hand. Let the market control itself. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have penalties for bad behavior, but you don't have to inflict the pain upon the good guys. And my experience is that, 85, 90% or more of the people in the industry are the good guys. And they're burdened with they're saddled with the burdens of doing the same things that the bad guys have to do. By the way, the bad guys don't even do it. They don't get licenses.
So we're here in the first place.
Yeah, so it's impossible to regulate, and I think to some degree it's hurting the industry. It's really important. I'm not a political guy, but it's really important to make sure that we have leaders who understand what we're doing. There's a story about Dennis Brown, who used to be the lobbyist for ELA, going to Governor Christie to talk to him about some of New Jersey's regulations over leasing. And Dennis sat down in Christie's office and said, and we're here to talk about leasing. And the governor said, you mean like leasing what? Homes,
car,
buildings.
It's like, no.
And Dennis said, no, we mean leasing everything, cranes, and boats and restaurant equipment and FF&E. And Governor Christie said, oh, no, you can't do that. He was just completely in the dark that the industry existed. Now the industry is $1 trillion industry. So he was a little bit off in his prognosis, but people, leaders, legislators need to understand the industry. Even the disclosure laws in California, they don't refer to the same we don't use the terminology provider, recipient. And it makes it more difficult to understand how funder, broker, borrower, lessee fit into their equations. There's going to be a lot of litigation, and it's just starting. And I've been in the middle of some of this stuff and trying to get opinions from these guys. And I really enjoy working with the DFPI. The people there are great. But when it comes to going up the ladder to legal, it's hard to get opinions. It's hard to get clarification on things. So it's
almost like when when that 1071 happens, when the CFPB gets their hands on the data, like, what are they really going to do with it? What are they trying to prove? I mean, you almost see where it's going, but it's like, really, like, the burden you're putting on small business is just
it is
crazy.
And, some people, and it's a burden on the large businesses too.
Yeah.
I mean, just because you're Amur or Balboa or Navitas, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt you.
Sure.
It requires you to hire people, which is a cost. And again, your backroom costs get passed on. So we'll see.
Yep.
But one thing I do know about the industry is it's very resilient. You can't kill it. It's like, they say about roaches, they just live forever. I mean, and I don't mean to make a derogatory reference to the industry. It's actually very admirable. No matter what you do to it, it comes back. It just the ITC didn't kill it. These other laws won't kill it either. It'll just pivot, to use a new term, which is probably last year's term already. But
Yeah, we'll see. It's an interesting year for the industry as well. But like you said, it
oh
is
yeah,
resilient. People will get leaner.
yeah.
You know,
Well,
some
it's
things have
happening.
each turned,
You
and
see it
yeah, I
right
mean
now.
yeah,
You see it with the banks. The banks
yep.
are the first. They're the first hit. Silicon Valley Bank's problems have become every bank's problem.
That was what 12. That was almost 12 months ago
And now
exactly.
look what's happening with First Foundation, and the banks are getting hit first, which is interesting. You wouldn't think it would be that way, but it is. And of course, when the banks get hit, the funders who borrow from the banks get hit, and the brokers who, broker to the banks get hit. So there's going to be a downside here. We're still in a quasi recession, no matter what anybody says. You can listen to Jesse Eisenberg, and he's the most depressing guy. He's humorous about it, but he's pretty realistic, and he thinks we're still in a recession, and I believe
Hmm,
it.
hmm.
Some costs have gone down, but so many costs have gone up. The price of living, the cost of groceries. I think it's like $1 an egg now, right?
I moved I moved from New Jersey, New York area to Arizona because how much you get for a home out here, right? Compared
Right.
to living on the East Coast in the tri-state area. And now I just saw a study where it's like Arizona is like in the top 5 most expensive states to buy a house. It's like,
There's nowhere to escape.
it's like what?
You can't go to Montana because of that stupid TV show.
Right? Come on. I mean, it's not stupid. I mean, come on.
Now, I know the
Yellowstone.
wonderful TV
Everyone wants to
show.
go live on a ranch now and
I
be
know
rip and
you can't
whatever.
afford it. It's crazy. I was thinking about Costa Rica or Belize, maybe.
Ken, what advice would you have, to a young attorney or a young professional entering the equipment finance industry?
I'm tempted to say don't do it, but that's not really,
No,
it's
no,
not,
that's not the purpose of the show. That's not the purpose.
and it's not what I mean. I'm joking. I'm
I
joking.
know, I know, I know.
Um, I think that what attorneys need to do is to learn the business. If you really want to focus, if you're going to be a generalist, then you don't really actually need to know everybody's business. But if you want to enter this particular niche, this industry, you should go to classes, go to the conferences, get educated, maybe become a CLFP, learn how your clients operate. So when they tell you about a problem that they're having with this discounting arrangement or with a broker agreement that's got this clawback provision, etc., you know what they're talking about, other
Sure,
than being just because these are not the types of problems that you learn about in law school. You don't learn how to be a lawyer in law school. You learn how to pass the bar.
sure,
And
sure.
then once you've gotten past that threshold, then you start to learn how to become a lawyer. And you become a lawyer by knowing how to apply the law to the people and the businesses that you represent. And the best way to do that is to know your business. And that's been, for me, it's been very fortuitous that, after 40 years, I've learned a little about the industry, maybe even a little more than that.
Hey, no, that's perfect advice. And And also probably if you have a question, just ask. Even if they're a competitor, people are very friendly
Get a
in this
mentor.
industry.
I don't recommend being a solo practitioner in this industry until you are ready. Join a firm that does leasing. There's plenty of them now. Learn under somebody else's watch. I had an amazing mentor in 1981, a guy by the name of Peter Nevitt, who basically wrote the book on leasing and leveraged leasing. He invented so many of the things that people take for granted today.
Hmm.
Just got on well, and he would just sit me in the office, and I just watch him work and learn from listening to him. Everybody should have a mentor, probably for a good 5 to 10 years. And then you can start to think about a partnership or going off on your own. I've been lucky because I've been in firms and I've learned enough that now I'm able to work on my own. Fortunately, I have a backup firm in Gordon Rees who takes my overflow and helps me with things that are over my head because leasing has gotten complicated. There's a lot of syndication, securities issues. There's things that, I really don't understand. I can go to them. And it's nice to have that kind of a backup.
Sure.
The nice thing about Gordon Rees is they have an office in every state, which means when you have an association full of people, generally one in every state, somebody, can call you up from Arkansas and say, I need help in Arkansas. Well, I don't practice there. I actually can't even remember where it's located, but I have a firm who will have an office there. Let me get you back.
No offense to our best. No offense. No
No
offense.
offense to anybody.
I'm just messing with
I
you, man.
don't get out anymore so much.
I'm just, I'm just messing with you. Um, I guess my kind of closing question I have for you is, at the end of the day, why would a broker or lender reach out to Ken Greene for legal advice?
Oh my goodness. It's a long answer to a short question. Um, in an economy like this one, in a highly competitive industry like this one, there are bound to be disagreements among people, even people who've worked together for years. And sometimes they can be resolved, and other times you need a third party to step in and take a look. And particularly at this stage of my life when I have no desire to go to court or to trial, my goal is always to resolve disputes before they escalate. So I can take a pretty good look at a situation and tell you where it's going. And if I can convince my clients that this is where you're going to end up, so let's just go there now and save yourself a lot of time, money, and aggravation. That's what I try to do. And there are more problems that can arise than I could possibly enumerate in this amount of time. A very popular one these days are, disputes between brokers and lenders about clawbacks and defaults and the kinds of fraud that are infesting this industry are insidious because they're always a step ahead of the industry. There's wire frauds and identity theft, and we've all been victimized to some degree. And the agreements between the funders and the brokers don't generally anticipate some of these types of fraud, where the
Sure,
broker
sure.
did all his due diligence, but he was dealing with a fraudulent website and a fraudulent statement of information and a fraudulent driver's license and a non-existent person and a non-existent vendor. The only thing that was real was the guy's wire instructions. So you send the money over to the bank and they're gone. And whose
Sure.
responsibility is it? So you've done everything you're supposed to do, but the lender says, no, that was fraud. You're going to pay me back. Those are hard disputes, but eventually the agreements will be modified
Sure.
to address that issue. But like I said, the fraudsters are always kind of a step ahead.
Sure.
All those guys that call you up, the spam calls and stuff like that, you can't stop it. We've got legislation, federal legislation, state legislation. The phone companies got tricks, but they call it anyway. They call it 7 a.m. and then
I've missed. I don't know what time. I've missed 5 calls since we've been on the phone. Since we've been on this.
it's your Medicare officer. This is your Medicare officer. I have a Medicare officer. What? Are you the sergeant, the general? Who are the Medicare officer? I don't. Yeah, the world's a little bit nuts.
Well,
But
Ken, it's been a pleasure getting to know more about you and your career today. I look forward to to seeing you over the next couple weeks. You know, thank you for your time, sir, and all you've given to the industry.
it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for all you're giving to the industry, and more. You're a terrific guy, Jesse, and it's great that you're doing this. Wonderful to know you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ken. We'll talk soon, sir.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
Thanks. You too.